Welcome to Lesson 6 Part B, and in this lesson I show you how to create a class, and from that class how to create objects of that class. Good. So in this example we create a class called door, and then we create new objects from this class. If you remember from Part A, we said that whenever we create new objects, this is called instantiate, or instances of a class are called objects. And I'm going to stick with the theme of the door in the last part, where we did several examples. We did the person object, we did the car object, and we also did the door object right at the end. I'm now going to build on that door object to show you how to build a class, and from that create objects from this class. Now, whenever you create a class, you always start with a capital letter. Unlike when you create new constants or variables or even new objects, you start with a small letter. But whenever you create a class, it always starts with a capital letter. So here I'm creating a new class called door, and we use the keyword class. So the start of this class starts off here, or the beginning of this class, or the start of the class definition begins here with this open bracket, and it ends right down here. So the class definition starts off here and ends up here. Now please remember, we are not creating the objects yet. We're just starting off by creating the class, the blueprints, the template for creating many doors. And we also explained that the class has both properties and it has methods, or in other words, it has attributes or it has behaviors. But in Swift, we call those attributes the properties, and we call the methods, we call the behaviors the methods. So first we have to create the properties, and my door is going to have 6 properties, and these are the 6 properties. Opened, which is a boolean; locked, which is a boolean; width, integer; height, integer; weight, integer; color, which is going to be a string. And I've defined some of those properties as being variables, like opened and locked are variables, because I need to lock the door and open the door. That's why they are variables. And I've decided to make the width, height, and weight of the door as constants. That's why I've got the let keyword here. And normally you wouldn't change, once a door is installed, you wouldn't change the width, the height, and the weight of the door, unless you replace the door. But in most cases, once the door is installed, all of these are constants. Then I've made a variable called color, and the reason why I chose this to be variable is because sometimes you may want to paint the door to a different color once it's installed, and that's why I decided to make this color a variable. Now, one thing about classes, whenever you create the properties, which are basically variables or constants, you have to give those variables or constant an initial value. So I had to, that is compulsory, you must give them initial values. So that's what I've done here. I've given opened and locked the initial value of false, and I've also given the width, height, and weight initial values, and I've given the initial color to be red. Okay, so these properties are declared as variables, since they will change, and these properties are declared as constants, which are not likely to be changed and also color here is variable. Now once I've defined my attributes for the class, I now define my methods, and all the methods they're basically functions. Okay. So I'm defining 4 methods which are functions. The first method is called open. It does not take any input parameters, but it does output a string. And what's the purpose of this method? All it does is when the door is opened, it puts the value of true into this attribute called opened. And it then returns a string, and the string is the door is open. The same with the close method. It does not take any parameters. It sets the attribute opened to false, and it outputs the door is closed. The same with lock. When you want to lock the door, you insert the value of true into the attribute called locked, and it outputs the door is locked. And the same with unlock. It is a method that changes the attribute locked into false and outputs the string the door is unlocked. So here again, let's have a recap. Then when you define a class, you give it a name with a capital letter, you define its attributes, and you define its attributes or properties, and then you define its methods, which are basically functions. And this packaging of properties with the methods is called encapsulation. We've encapsulated the properties and the methods into one class called door. That's called encapsulation. Now once we've created the class, we now need to make objects of that class, or in other words, we want to create instances of that class, or we want to instantiate a new object. And that's what I'm doing here. I'm creating a new object called front door of type door, of class door. So this is the class that I just created, door, and now I'm creating a new object of that type. We say that we've instantiated a new object called front door using the door class, and notice that front door object is in lowercase while this one's in uppercase. Another way of looking at it, we have created our own custom data type called door, and now we are creating an object called front door of that type. Now once front door is created, you'll notice here, if I just click on it, I've created a new front door, and it's been initialized with all of the properties, the default values for the property. So it's put in the value of false into the attribute called opened. It's put in the value of false into the attribute called locked. It's given the width of 32. It's given the height of 72. It's given the weight of 10 and the color of red. So it's inserted those values as defaults based on what I specified here as initial values. Now that my door has been created, my front door has been created with initial properties, I can now call the methods or do some actions on this front door. So what can I do? I can close the door. Right, so how do I close the door? This is how you do it. You type in the name of the object, put in a dot, and type in the name of the method. So if I want to close the door, I say front door dot close. And notice between these two brackets there's nothing in there because it does not accept any input parameters. The input parameter for close, there is no input parameter, it's void. Notice it's void. So I'm not passing any parameters to this function or to this method called close. So what it does is it invokes this method, or in other words, it passes a message called close to this object called front door, and this method then executes, and in this method returns the door is closed. If I want to open the door, front door dot open, I invoke this method called open, and the method then returns the door is open. Same with lock and the same with unlock. So I'm calling these functions or invoking these methods or passing messages to my object. Good. Now you'll notice that there's a dot here. This is called using dot notation. Okay. The name of the object, dot, and the name of the method. So that was calling the methods. How about accessing the properties? Now if I want to check what the height is of the front door, I type in front door dot height. Here again dot notation, and tells me the front door is 72, the height of 72. Now if I want to check the color, I can check the color. If I want to check whether it's opened or not, in this case this door is opened, which is true. How do I know it's opened? I've just opened it up here. Invoke this method. So this method went and changed this attribute or this property to open. Let's create another door of the same type. So here I'm creating another new door called bathroom door of the type door, and here again it gets initialized with the same values that I've set as defaults. Same ones to front door. Okay, so at this stage both the doors are identical. But now I don't want the bathroom door to be red. I would like the bathroom door to be black. So that's when I can change the color property to black. The reason why I can change the color property to black, because this variable, this color was declared as a variable up here. I couldn't change the width, height and weight, but I could change the color because I've declared it as a variable. Okay, so as a recap, what we've done is we've created a class called door, and we've created two objects or two instances of that class, one called front door and the other one called bathroom door. Now these two doors, the front door and the bathroom door, are two separate entities with their own properties, but they share the same methods. But when it comes to the properties, they are two separate entities that have unique properties, or we can change their properties. Thank you for watching this part. When we get back, we will study more about classes and inheritance and so on.